We're coming back to this concept of if. And I love this word because if comes with so many possibilities. There's possibilities on the positive side, but also possibilities on the negative side. If I do this, we could succeed, but if I do this, we could also fail. Or if I don't do this, we're going to miss out on these opportunities. And so if is all-encompassing. And part of what I'm trying to get at is what would it look like if God's people followed Jesus with reckless abandonment? What would that look like for us? But we're going to mess up, we're going to stumble, we're going to have issues along the way, but God provides a way for us to get back to Him. And in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14, He said, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, and I, God, this is a promise, if we do this, then God will do this, this is a promise, I, God, I will hear from heaven, I will forgive their sins and heal their lands. So this if comes with a promise from God. But there's also some other ifs that we find throughout Scripture. And the if we're going to get to today is about doing things together, essentially. If you may be familiar with Ecclesiastes chapter, this is about possibilities. Let me make this if is about possibilities. What does it look like when we come together to the work that Jesus has called us to do? But we come to Ecclesiastes chapter 4. You may be familiar with this. 2 people are better than 1, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But a person who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, 2 people lying close together can keep each other warm. But how can one person stay warm alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back to back and conquer. I just love that imagery, conquer. But 3 is even better. A triple braided cord is not easily broken. So we're going to, if you want to put your finger in Ecclesiastes 4, and you can keep it there because we're also going to look at Mark chapter 9. But that was Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12. But we have this thing, I wrote down, it's an individual fallacy. We have this problem that we've come up with that we have to do it alone. So it's this individual fallacy of if I want it done right, I have to do it myself. Which actually isn't true. Because what we're actually meaning is if I want it done my way, I have to do it myself. And if we're honest with ourselves and articulate it that way, we would realize my way may not be the right way. Or at least my way might not be the only way. See, it's not about it being done to a certain standard. It's about I want it done my way. Now, we ask ourselves, is it better to do things alone or together? Now, there may be a few things that are better to do alone. I don't need anybody to help me brush my teeth, right? That would be a little weird, right? I'm going to brush my teeth alone, okay? But for the most part, it's better to do things together. And we would say that. We would say that, but it's really hard sometimes to actually do that. So there may be some exceptions where it's better to do things privately or alone. But in most cases, 2 is better. And when we do things together, they can have the ability to enhance. And so what happens is the 2 come together and it actually grows. I don't fully understand how this works, but sound waves function in this capacity. That if one person claps, there's a certain amount of volume that happens. But then when we clap together, the frequency of the sound waves that we are creating somehow combine and actually enhance. And they don't compete with each other. They support each other. They make each other get bigger and better. And so that's why you can have things at concerts or sporting events or major events where the crowd cheers or applauds or something, and great decibels of volume are created. Not because one person made such a volume, but because the sound waves work together with all the people doing that and coming together. See, when combined, the noise reaches tremendous decibels and we reach greater heights. And so I have the phrase that I was working on is that segregation reduces while support reinforces. See, if we do things by ourselves, we're actually lowering our capacity. But when we do things together, we enhance our capacity. And so we're coming to Mark chapter 9, starting in verse 17, as Jesus is out and about doing ministry. A large crowd has formed, and a man from the crowd came up to Jesus, starting in verse 17. He says, "Teacher, I brought you my son so that you could heal him. He is possessed by an evil spirit that makes him unable to speak. When it seizes him, it throws him into a violent convulsion. He falls to the ground, foaming at the mouth, grinding his teeth, and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to drive out the evil spirits, but they couldn't do it." And so Jesus said, "You faithless people, how long must I stay with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy to me." So they brought the boy to Jesus. And when the spirit saw Jesus, it threw the boy into a violent convulsion. He fell to the ground, writhing and grinding his teeth and foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked, "How long has this been happening?" And the boy's father said, "Since he was a little child. The spirit often throws him into the fire or the water to try to kill him. Please have mercy on us and help us if you can." "What do you mean if I can?" Jesus asked. "Anything is possible if a person believes." And the man cried out, "I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief." So this is a vivid image here of what we're seeing, that this boy is possessed by an evil spirit. And you know, this is one of those areas where we have to be very careful when we talk about today. Because in our world today, our science, technology has advanced to the point of we understand things a lot better than they did back then. We understand things more clearly with that. But these demonic forces that they were fighting in Jesus' time still exist today. And so what we have to be careful of is what is fact and what is fantasy. And so we can read these stories of magic and have these make-believe things happen, which is fun. But we also have to make sure that we recognize that there's evil in the world. That these demonic forces are not something that we should mess with. They're not things that say, "Ooh, this should be fun," which is how our society says it should be. Oh, you can just enjoy this. You can have fun. You can find entertainment value in this. But this is a real and dangerous situation in which this boy and his family are in. When you think about the boy, he grinds his teeth. He foams at the mouth. It's dangerous. It's disturbing. There's nothing pleasant about what's happening here. Now the boy's father tells Jesus that he asked the disciples to cast out the evil spirit, but they could not do it. And that's worth noting, because this is in Mark chapter 9. In Mark chapter 6, Jesus sent his disciples out, and they went throughout doing ministry, casting out evil spirits. So they had already been doing this type of work, but when this evil spirit came before them, they were unable to cast it out, and were unsure as to why. So when Jesus rebukes the disciples for their lack of faith, that's part of the reason. Now, Jesus is rebuking the disciples, he's rebuking the crowd, he's rebuking all people there. But it's interesting, Jesus kind of seems frustrated. See, the version I read says, Jesus said, "How long must I stay with you? How long must I put up with you?" When you're talking about putting up with someone, it's rarely done in a positive way. So Jesus is just, he's frustrated, tired. I don't exactly know, but we can see that there's emotion coming through and the language Jesus is using. But the boy comes to Jesus, and the spirit recognizes Jesus. And this is not the only time where this happens, where Jesus has an interaction and we see that the Spirit either explicitly or implicitly recognizes who Jesus is. But one thing this shows us is that just because you know who Jesus is doesn't mean you're right with Jesus. The demonic forces know who Jesus is. They are afraid of Jesus. They are terrified of Jesus. And so, but just because you know who Jesus is doesn't mean you're where you need to be. See, the spirit sees Jesus, and it throws the boy into another violent convulsion. It's not happy to be there. The spirit does not want to be where Jesus is. It's not pleasant. It's not good. The spirit knows this is not going to work out well for it. But this is also not a recent problem. This is a chronic problem the boy has dealt with. The father said, since he was a little child, this boy has dealt with this. Now, on some level, if the spirit would throw the child into the fire or to the water to try to kill it, and it's been happening for years, you give some kudos to the parents for the effort they put forth to care for this child. So let's make sure we're not hard on the parents, because they were probably exhausting themselves to take care of this child. For years, this had been happening, yet the child was still there. But even so, the boy's father had some doubts. Help us if you can. Now, we don't know all of the context for this man and his state of mind, where he was personally, mentally, emotionally, financially, all those types of things. But he had doubt. He comes to Jesus essentially saying, I've exhausted every resource I have. Anything you could do would be helpful. Anything you could do would be appreciated if you can. And so he had doubt embedded with that. But also don't be too hard on the father, because the father just wanted the best for his child. He had taken care of this child for years, protected it. He just wanted the best. And now remember, the disciples couldn't cast out the demon. So if the disciples couldn't, maybe the man's like, well, if they can't, why could Jesus? What would make him any different to be able to do this? Now, in a kind way, I think, maybe I'm reading into the text a little bit, but Jesus rebukes the father in a kind way. He says, hey, if you believe, this is possible. You know, if we believe God can do it, it can come to fruition. Now, this is not an individual promise. It's not one of the I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength so I can lift heavier weights in the gym. This is about believing in God's power over our lives. And this is the promise for the community of believers, because we come back to the fact that segregation separates, but support reinforces. When we come together, we can enhance. And so in this moment, the dad cries out and he says, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. And so part of it, we see some honesty from the father here in the sense of he recognized he had issues he needed to work through, that he had not arrived spiritually. He says, help me overcome. So he comes to Jesus, not just asking for help for his son, but help for himself. So when we come to Jesus, we need to make sure we tell him we need your help to overcome this situation in our lives. But we're called, again, not to do things in isolation. And the Ecclesiastes passage talks about a triple braided cord. It's not easily broken. And so in this, we see the difference between a chain and a rope that's braided. Now, and chains often in our settings are typically stronger than ropes because of our ability to create the material. But when you think about chains are only as strong as their weakest link. And in fact, chains are like, it's individuals. You think of the game Red Rover. You know, you link up with the person next to you. And you know, if you're the one who gets called to go to the other side, you have to run through the other side, you're going to look to say, where's the weakest point? And how can I get through that point? And so that's how chains are. They're only as strong as their weakest link. But ropes, when they're braided, can actually strengthen each other. That even if a little bit gets kind of severed a little bit, the rope can still continue to exist and rely on itself. And I recognize there's some positives and negatives about the imagery here. But the fact I want to focus on is that links are individuals. They're just connected to the one next to it. But Jesus calls us to do more than just be connected. He calls us to be intertwined. He calls us to do everything together. It's not just about working in isolation. Because when we're in isolation, it only takes one weak spot in order for the link, the chain, to be broken and not be effective anymore. But Jesus then, we continue in verse 25, he says he rebuked the evil spirit. He said, "Listen, spirit that makes this boy unable to hear or speak, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." Then the spirit screamed and threw the boy into another violent convulsion and then left him. The boy appeared dead, and a murmur spread throughout the crowd with people saying, "He's dead." But Jesus took the boy by the hand, helped him up, and he stood up. So Jesus rebukes the spirit. He gets to the miracle side of this story. Now, his rebuke, the rebuke that Jesus issued toward the evil spirit, was that from a position of authority as well as integrity. But we have to be careful when we talk about the concept of authority, because there's this area of, it's called positional authority. Many of you have jobs or had jobs in which you had somebody who was your manager, your boss, your supervisor, something like that. And that person had positional authority over you. In the confines of the job that you had to do, you had to listen to this person. But they may not have been worth following. Just because somebody has positional authority doesn't mean they actually have influence or actually are somebody worth following. So Jesus' authority is not just because he has the position. He has authority because he comes to us. He leads us. He guides us. He cares for us. So it's more than just he is stronger, so he is the one who wins. He has authority in all aspects. So we think of things, we sing songs like, "There's nothing that our God can't do." Jesus displayed God's power in this moment by rebuking the evil spirit, by casting it out of this child, and he commanded the spirit to leave and never come back. And the spirit obeyed. The spirit listened to Jesus, and so the boy, he was freed from the thing that was binding him. He was freed from this affliction. He was freed from the power of the evil spirit. But don't miss the spirit, the evil spirit here. The evil spirit fought to stay in this child. The spirit didn't go willingly. The spirit went because it was forced. It screamed. It threw the boy into another violent convulsion. The spirit did all it could to resist. But Jesus' power was never in doubt. It wasn't as though there was a battle where it's like, who's going to win? It was a battle in the fact that the Spirit said, I'm going to do all I can to remain in this child. But we can think of our own lives. The things that have a hold of you in your own life are going to fight tooth and nail to remain. They don't want to leave. If it was easy to get rid of them, you would have done it a long time ago. Whatever that may be. Whatever that negative thing, the thing that has a hold of you, if it was been easy to get rid of, you could have done it on your own. If it would have been easy to get rid of, this boy's father would have gotten rid of it. But it's only through the power of Jesus that the boy was able to be freed. But he was lifeless. And again, I said this is kind of a vivid miracle, a vivid story of Jesus. And the fact of the boy appeared to be dead. And a murmur spread throughout the crowd with people saying he's dead. Like people literally thought this killed the child. Such an emotional roller coaster for the father. In the sense of the father loved the child, or we assumed he did, cared for him for all these years, knowing how much the child struggled, wanted the child to live, but also didn't want the child to be possessed by the spirit anymore. But Jesus helped the boy. He got to his feet. He stood up. And we see the boy is freed, that he has complete victory. And that's what Jesus wants to do for us. This miracle is not just limited to this particular context. Jesus wants us to be freed from our afflictions. He wants us to be freed from that which binds. But he also calls us to do things together. He calls us to recognize that it's not just about our own individual strength. I think the concept of draft horses is very interesting. And draft horses are very strong animals and can pull a lot of weight. But when you properly pair two draft horses together, they can pull more than the sum of their individual efforts. And I think the rule of thumb is typically 2 horses can pull 3 times the amount of 1 horse. So if 1 horse can pull 8,000 pounds, the math would say, well, 2 can then pull 16,000 pounds. No, actually 2 can then pull 24,000 pounds. So 1 can do 8,000, another can do 8,000, and then we somehow come up with another 8,000 when they come together to do the work. And there are theories as to why that happens, and I really, it was interesting to look at, but I don't know why it happens. But I do know that when the 2 come together, they can do more than the individual efforts by each horse. And that's what Jesus wants from us. But sometimes we have questions. And so afterwards, Jesus is with his disciples. They're alone in a house, and they ask him, why couldn't we cast out the demon? And he says, this kind can only come out with prayer. Now, this is a legitimate question from the disciples. Because again, 3 chapters earlier, in Mark chapter 6, they had been sent out by Jesus to do ministry, and they drove out evil spirits. They did these things. This was they've already had experience doing this, but Jesus says this kind can only come out through prayer. I also find it interesting that Jesus does not stop and pray before he casts out the demon. So it can only come out with prayer, but I didn't pray. Part of Jesus' point is that he spends time with the Father prior to the need for the miracle. Throughout the Gospel of Mark, we see several times where it says Jesus withdrew and prayed. He got up early, withdrew to a lonely place, and prayed. And so he consistently spent time with the Father, with God, in prayer, in communication, so he was able to confront the situation that was in front of him. It wasn't one of those things where Jesus says, if you pray a good enough prayer right before the need, then it's going to be successful. That's not Jesus' point here. It's not as though, well, if you guys would have prayed better in the moment, then the power of God would have been at your disposal. It was, you need to spend time consistently with the Father. You need to spend time consistently praying to God, because the miracle is not an individual act. And that's really important for us to recognize here, because a lot of times we think, well, it's just about me, just about my abilities. Maybe we don't say that, but that's how we act. Well, I can conquer this on my own. I can do this myself. But we come back to Ecclesiastes, 2 are better than 1, and I love how it's phrased, for they can help each other succeed. 2 are not better than 1 so somebody can make you feel bad about yourself. 2 are not better than 1 so somebody can tell you the faults and flaws that you have in your life. 2 are better than 1 because the other person can reach out and help you if you fall. 2 are better than 1 because they can help you be successful. They can cover your blind spots. You can stand back to back to protect yourself from the attack of the enemy. See, the miracle is not just about Jesus doing something by himself in the moment. It was the fact that him and the Father were united and together, and he calls us to join him in that union. He calls us to be with him. He was continually refreshed and replenished with the Father. He never did things alone. So I come back to the fact that segregation reduces while support reinforces. See, as followers of Jesus, we are not called to work in isolation. Now, there may be times where we do certain things alone, and that's okay. There are exceptions. But in general, we are called to work together, to draw strength from each other, to support each other, to encourage each other, to inspire each other, to motivate each other, to push each other, to congratulate each other, to celebrate with each other. We are called to do these things. We're called to support and encourage each other, which sometimes means we have to carry each other's burdens. We have to keep focus. It's not, I have to do things myself to do it right. We have to keep focus by recognizing that fallacy is saying, I want it my way, and that's the only acceptable way. See, when we carry each other's burdens, we help each other when we struggle. And last week I made the comment about no one cries alone. What if we live that way? That if we're going through something, we can say we got people that can help carry our burdens. And hopefully that brings us to the conclusion that we can do more together than the sum of our individual efforts. But you know what? We try to do things on our own. And sometimes we feel really proud of the struggle it is to do it on our own. You may notice there's a couch here on stage today. This couch was my grandfather's couch on my dad's side. He passed away before I was born, so I never knew him. But this couch is probably from the 60s. It could be the 50s, but probably the 60s. It's a very uncomfortable couch if you're going to watch a movie. You see, the back is really short, right? You're not going to read, but if you're just sitting for a meeting, it's fine. Or so I'm told. I don't sit on the couch. But so there's a bed in the couch, which means the bed is heavy, right? That couch sits in my office normally and doesn't move because it's heavy and I don't want to move it. I put this couch up here by myself. And I did so to prove a point, not because not to myself. I didn't need any affirmation from that. And there is video evidence. I think we may be able to show it to you about this. But so it was hard to move the couch myself. Even if there was no bed in the couch, it was hard. And there are a few things that are really difficult. Getting the couch through a door, you have to turn to the side, and it's all a lot of fun with that. But there are also there's often evidence of our struggle when we try to do things ourselves. If you happen to walk down this aisle today, you may see there's some marks on the carpet. And you're like, what were those? And you look on the stage, you may put two and two together, I don't know. But now the carpet's fine, it's not ruined, it's not ripped or anything like that. But there's evidence that the couch was dragged. Now, and you don't drag a couch if you got two people that are carrying the couch. It's far less efficient to do that. So I got a few people that are going to come help me. The couch people, can you come? So we're going to illustrate this a little bit, and give them a hand, yeah. I just realized we missed a Price is Right opportunity with 4 people. Come on down. Okay, so we're going to come up here, and. So this is a heavy couch. I'm going to have Austin and Rob start, okay? I want you to pick up the couch. It's a heavy couch, right? Right? It's not a light couch. I mean, when they made things that old. And so now it was heavy, so you put it down, right? Yes. It's not pleasant to just hold the couch for a long period of time, right? So Kevin will have you come over here, and John over there. And now I want all 4 of you to lift the couch. Now it's easier, right? So and Rob's holding with one hand. Oh man, so must be a rodeo guy. But so keep holding the couch. You guys could probably hold this couch for many minutes. It wouldn't be comfortable, right? But you could do it. Now let's set the couch down. Now, one of the great things about improv is you have to say yes, okay? All right? We didn't work on this very much. So we're going to see if this works, okay? So I want to see if you can pick up the couch. Let's pick up the couch. All right? Let's see.
Ready to go.
Yeah, see, this is great. This is great stuff. All right, you can sit down. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, guys. Can anybody pick it up by themselves? Let's see. Can anybody want to try to pick it up by themselves? No. They all the way. Whole thing. The whole thing. Anybody want to try? Yeah. Okay. All right. So thank you, guys. You can. So it took me over 5 minutes to get the couch on stage from my office. And it probably take them, I don't know, 45 seconds to 60 seconds to get it back to my office. Now, if you think of that, okay, so let's say it was 2 people that did that. So let's say it was a minute each, so 60 seconds each. So that was 2 minutes worth of work from 2 people, as opposed to 5 minutes from 1 person. They would not be nearly as out of breath as I was by getting this couch up here. There wouldn't be evidence of the marks of the dragging couch, of evidence of trying to do it ourselves. And you know, one of the things is, so 2 people can move that couch just fine. 2 of those guys could move the couch just fine. But 4 was even better. Now, there are exceptions. There are a few times where 4 would have been too many. Getting through just a normal doorway would have been a little difficult with 4. You could do it, but it gets a little crowded. But if you're getting through a double doorway, the 4 makes it actually easier. And so that's what happens. The problem that I find with life is that there are so many of us, we're dragging the couch ourselves. We're going around life dragging the couch. And we say, Jesus, I'm in trouble. And he says, let me take that from you. But he also says, you got to share with yourselves. Part of the miracle of Jesus is that he has given us each other. Segregation reduces, support reinforces. We can do more together than we can the sum of our individual efforts. But we can't keep dragging the couch by ourselves. We got to let other people help. Now, something like moving a couch, we're pretty comfortable asking somebody to help. I'm talking about these personal issues, these emotional issues, these vices, these mentalities, these addictions, these heartaches, whatever it may be. Those are the things that we're carrying ourselves. And there's evidence of it. We may be pretty good at hiding it. We may be pretty good at trying to convince others that it's not a problem. But Jesus knows what we're carrying. And it's causing hurt, damage, problems, no matter your best effort. But what would happen if we, as the body of Christ, as believers in Jesus, came together with this mentality that says, nobody cries alone. Nobody carries the burden alone. Nobody has to go through this alone. You know, that requires vulnerability. It requires we come to Jesus and says, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. It requires we may face disappointments. It requires that we may get hurt along the way. It does. I don't want to sugarcoat any of that. But when we live in the beauty of the community that Jesus has invited us to come to, then it's not just going to be 3 times like the draft horses. It's going to be 60, 90, 100 times more beautiful than we can even imagine. So I'm going to challenge you to quit dragging the couch yourself. It may be hard to ask others for help, but it's what Jesus has called us to do. It's the hope to which Jesus has called us to live. And he can do that. It requires courage. It requires that we not be afraid to be exposed, to be vulnerable, to be ridiculed.